I'm about to go level up. I cannot settle for nothing. I never been regular. Always knew I could do better. I finally made it this far and I'm not looking back. They didn't see all the time that I put in. Now me and the money are way too attached. Still repping 919. The city is mine and I put it all on the map. Coming for what I deserve. I put in the work. Now I'm about to level up. Been on my grind since 2013. Now the way that I live, I feel.
Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? Is your boy David, and I am back with another video here. It has been a long time coming. I appreciate everybody in support, everybody watching this video. Make sure you guys go give this video a like. Make sure you subscribe to the Top Bunk Sports YouTube channel. Make sure you like this video, like I said. Make sure you follow me on X, TikTok, Instagram. Subscribe to that YouTube channel, like I said before, and show me some love, man. That's all I'm asking. Show me some love. But it is good to be back. I took a very long break just to kind of enjoy the moments of the beginning of the summer. Obviously, you know, the Knicks winning the NBA championship. I'll go into that on another video. I got a separate video for that. Just, you know, giving some time off. You know, I was finishing work. I took some time off of work to just enjoy the full summer. You know, for those of you that know me personally, I work at a school as a kitchen janitor. So, you know, I get the same days off that all the kids do. So that allows me to take the summer off. That I get days off on Christmas, I get days off on Thanksgiving, the spring break, midwinter recess, all that. So, you know, I said, you know, this year I'm not going to work. I'm just going to enjoy my summer and, you know, just calm down, do what I got to do. And, you know, hopefully I get to, you know, just have fun, you know, take some time off and just really calm down. But with that being said, I'm back. You're gonna be expecting a lot of more. Not expecting. I'm sure you guys are gonna be expecting, but for those who care, but you're gonna be seeing a lot of videos from me. Not depending on the schedule, because obviously I go to school now. I'm going to school for cybersecurity, so there's a little more on my plate than as per usual. But I will be taking time off. Not time off, excuse me. I took enough time off, but I will be dedicating more to the videos. I got a couple videos planned already for you guys. I will be doing lives soon. I might do a live for the Mets and Chicago White Sox, depending on how I feel. But as of right now, I just want to kind of get the podcast going, get all the YouTube videos out, you know, promote. You know, you guys seen me on Queens Baseball's lives all the time, every Thursday at 9 o'clock on YouTube. So make sure you guys show my guys some love and subscribe to that Queens Baseball YouTube channel and follow them on Queens Baseball on all major platforms. But there has been a lot that we have not spoken about since my last video. Now, my last video was on the Knicks, and that was one of their last games, I believe, at the end of February or in the beginning of March. I had stopped doing content for a little while just because, you know, I was like, you know, let me take a break. The season's about to end, so the playoffs would give me a good start to just kind of, you know, start from there with the playoffs, since I had been doing some, you know, post-game videos on the Knicks and stuff like that. But then I ended up finding myself just going to watch parties and enjoying the playoff run with friends and family, especially my friends on Knicks Twitter. Shout out to my guys at NYKX, that's family. For those of you who know and watch my stuff, shout out to y'all. I appreciate y'all, much love. So I just found myself doing that and enjoying the ambiance of our Knicks championship run. So I didn't really do much content on that, and you know, I said, you know what, when I'm ready and I, you know, I give myself some time, I'm gonna go ahead and just do a video, not only talking about the Knicks, but talking about the Mets. And this is what this video is about. And to say the least, man, it has been nothing but disappointment. It's been nothing but disappointment. For those of you that have watched me on Queens Baseball Live, you know how I feel. You know how I feel about the decisions that they've made in the off seasons, to all the chatter about the one guy that nobody wants to talk about because he's not here no more, and Pete Alonso, Edwin Diaz, and just so much that they have missed and that they've messed up on. You guys know my opinion on that. I would be glad to kind of, you know, re-talk about that in a way, and really just give my opinion, man. Again, a lot of stuff that we haven't spoken about. Mind you, I haven't did a Mets video since the end of 2025 or in the middle of 2025. I didn't do a video about the Mets when the season started. So I never gave my opinion on the signings that they did in the off season. I never did a thing. I never did one because, again, in that midst, I was just sticking to the Knicks thing for in that moment because the Knicks were playing well. They were up and down, obviously, but there was a lot of chatter around the Knicks and how they were going to win the championship. And then, obviously, like I said, I went to a lot of watch parties and really didn't do a lot of post game videos on their playoff run. But like I said, that's a separate conversation for another video, which I have coming up. But it was really bad. And a lot of my fans are really speaking out about the way that Steve Cohen and David Stearns are running this team. Now, if there is there a clear, is there a clear vision? Shout out to my guy Randy. Is there a clear vision as to what David Stearns wants to do now that he is in position as a president of baseball operations? That is not the clear part. He may have a clear vision as to what he wants to do, but with the fans, there's and what I mean by that is, how can I say it? And this is straight raw. This is nothing fixed or whatever. We were lied to. And I continue to say that on Spaces, on X Spaces, right? Shout out to Queens Baseball once again. I'm on their Spaces all the time. And I say it on their lives when I'm there. We were lied to because with a payroll that we have, we were told one thing and David Stearns is doing the other. He does these press conferences, and so does Cohen. Cohen does this press conference all the time. Steve Cohen is basically trying to soften the Met fans as much as possible. Pause. I don't want nobody to take that as the wrong way. I'm not. But, it's the choice of words that I got coming to my mind in the moment. You're trying to tell the fan base that, I believe we did this good. I believe we did that good. I feel like this is going to go right. I feel like this is going to go this way. And I feel like we're going to succeed in this and we're going to succeed in that. At some point, we as fans have to look past that. And the reason why I say that is because we're tired of losing every year. Now, that's not to say, oh, we're going to switch teams and no, but at some point, accountability has to be taken here. We're New Yorkers. We love to hold everybody accountable in a way, and rightfully so. That's what has to happen. It happens in New York sports all the time. It doesn't matter what your favorite team is. You're a New Yorker. You're holding somebody accountable when things don't get right. The Yankees do it all the time. Brian Cashman and Hal Steinbrenner have been under immense pressure and have been in the fire for so long because they allow inconsistency to happen. Again, they haven't made the World Series since 2009, but they constantly make the playoffs. Their standards right now are, we need World Series or this is a failure. And that's mostly the older generation of Yankee fans. I'm not talking about the new ones. The new generation of Yankee fans are basically on some like, as long as we make the playoffs, it's okay. Anything can happen. And it's like, no, that's not the way. I wasn't alive during George Steinbrenner's prime, but enough research is done to know that, if you didn't make the World Series, the season's a failure. The season is such a failure in a way. So, at some point, we have to hold that same standard to Steve Cohen. We have to hold that same standard to David Stearns, okay? Because this was a guy that was given multitude of opportunities to really show what we can be. We used his success in Milwaukee and said, if he can do that with a small market team in Milwaukee who's competing every year, they're winning the division almost every year with a bunch of guys that are basically prospects. Imagine what he could do with that type of mindset in a big market and the type of money that he has. That was the philosophy. Now that he has money, he's in an organization that is willing to spend the money. Imagine what he can do with that type of team. The problem is that he hasn't been able to do that. They've only gotten one guy that they went out there and really paid for that's in his prime, and that's Juan Soto, but that's it. I always go, when it comes to Juan Soto, I always go by the meme of Juan Soto is that Bugatti parked in the driveway of a trailer park. Right? That meme where you see the Bugatti parked in the driveway next to the trailer park. That's Juan Soto. You know, Lindor is that Bugatti, that second Bugatti that he has, or that Ferrari that he has, right? Where you're like in GTA and you're Trevor, and not I think, yeah, Trevor, and excuse me, yeah, I don't know if I forgot for a second. I think it's Trevor. I forgot, but the construction worker, the one that lived the one that lives in the trailer park, where you take him to the inner city and you steal like a fancy car, and he has like two fancy cars parked next to his trailer, like that's Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor. You don't put nothing sustainable around them to make the playoffs every year and to win every year. Yet you come out here and say, we want to be the East version of the Dodgers. And I've always said, we hold you accountable to that. You know, we bypass a little bit of what Steve Cohen said when he first became the owner. That first press conference that he did when he became the owner, when he said, I want to win a championship within 3 to 5 years. Met fans held him accountable for that, but not to the extent of you saying, "Yo, I want to be the East Dodgers." Okay, you want to be the East Dodgers. Well, then you're gonna have to perform like the East Dodgers. You're gonna have to make acquisitions aggressively like the East Dodgers have. I mean, like the West Dodgers, excuse me, like the West Dodgers have. So if you're trying to hold yourself to that standard, yet you haven't performed to that standard, you can't put yourself on that level. So him and David Stearns have been held accountable, and they continue to be held accountable, because at the end of the day, for the payroll that you have, the $300 million plus payroll that you have, the type of product that we're seeing, especially this year, because last year you should have made the playoffs with the team last year. They just underperformed in the second half of the season. This year, you should have made a better team and you should be in the playoffs. But right now, that's not the case. That's not the case. So we sit here on a losing year, having to trade our best assets that we love, because once again, for the third time in his ownership, he's missing the playoffs. In his fifth year, he's missing the playoffs. So I want to show you guys an overview of what we've went through so far. Because mind you, like I said, I this is the first video I'm making about the Mets in 2026, and you guys are gonna like the thumbnail that I'm gonna put on YouTube for it, because it is what it is. So here we go. So obviously, the 2026 Mets season overview so far. Record is we're 58-71. I believe our longest losing streak, but not only our longest, but the losing streak that I feel like doomed us all was a 12-game losing streak that we went through back in April, from April 8th to the 21st. And that's when we finally beat the Minnesota Twins in that second game of the season. The second game of the series, excuse me. As of right now, we're 17 games back from first place in the NL East division, and we are 11 games back in the NL wild card. And I'll get to that conversation later on, because there are a lot of people that believe that if the Mets are able to kind of make the playoffs in a way, and shock people, that it can be done. I don't necessarily think so, but there are people that believe that can happen. So then we get to the offseason moves, and I got a list of all the offseason moves, right? We traded Brandon Nimmo to the Texas Rangers for Marcus Semien. We signed Devin Williams to a 3-year, $50 million contract. We signed Jorge Polanco to a 2-year, $40 million contract. We traded Jeff McNeil to the Athletics. We traded for Bo Bichette, 3 years, $126 million. So that's $42 million per year, with 2 opt-outs. And again, it was reported like about, I believe it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, where John Heyman went on his usual live on Bleacher Report, and he basically said that Bo Bichette's most likely opting in. There's a 2% chance that he opts out. So he most likely will be back for the 2027 season. He still has an opt-out after that 2027 season, so he could opt out after the 2027 season, again. So he has that option, but most likely he will opt in. So he'll be our third baseman. We traded for Luis Robert, where we sent Luis Angel Acuna to the White Sox. We signed Luke Weaver to a 2-year deal. I messed up on that last part. And we traded for Freddie Peralta, right? And there's a lot of conversations to have within the move. Devin, and I'll start off with the Brandon Nimmo and Marcus Semien move, right? So the Brandon Nimmo and Marcus Semien move, in that moment, I remember where I was when that happened. I was out having dinner with the family, and all of a sudden I see Paston's notification. And in the moment I said, you know what? Because I went and I checked Marcus Semien's stat from 2025. He finished with I don't remember the actual average in that moment, but I do remember the OPS. He had a 630 something. I think it was like 630 something OPS. Now, some of us, especially in Queens baseball, were trying to justify the move. They were trying to justify Marcus Semien basically, being a good pickup. They were trying to justify Marcus Semien being a better pickup than Jeff McNeil. Now, did I want Jeff McNeil here? No, I wanted him traded. I think that 1 year in 2022 of him being a batting champion was done. Everybody was talking about how he had a great second half in 2024, and he did the same thing in 2025. I don't care about that. You're up and down with Jeff McNeil. How much can we risk being up and down with a player? The thing is, we didn't take a leap, in my opinion, with Marcus Semien. Marcus Semien is already 36, 37. He's not the same Marcus Semien that he was with Toronto, the same Marcus Semien that he was in 2023, 3 years ago. He's not the same Marcus Semien that he was with the A's. When Marcus Semien was there, he was one of the best shortstops in the league. He was one of the best right-handed hitters in the league, especially at his age. So now it's like you get the Marcus Semien and you're hoping that he's somewhat of what he used to be, but he hasn't been that. He's been horrible. Where a lot of people, the funny thing is that, like I said, a lot of people, it wasn't a position for position, right? It was, you traded your left fielder for a second baseman, right? Because you obviously traded Jeff McNeil. And mind you, they traded Jeff McNeil after they made the Marcus Semien move. So everybody already knew that Jeff McNeil was gone. But my thing is, right, because a lot of people like to use this thing where Carson Bench got called up and AJ Ewing got called up, and they traded Brandon Nimmo to make room for Carson Bench. My problem with that is you didn't have to trade Brandon Nimmo to bring up Carson Bench. You didn't have to do that. You could have put Brandon Nimmo as a DH. The number one issue with Brandon Nimmo that everybody was talking about last year in 2025 was that he couldn't defensively play the field because he had the injury on his foot. I can't say the name in the moment because every time I say the name of the injury, I just mess it up. But because of the injury with his foot, he was never the same. And remember, this issue happened back in 2024, right? But he was dealing with it in 2025, and everybody was like, yo, he can't play the field. But the thing about Brandon Nimmo was that his power was getting better. Every year, Brandon Nimmo was hitting a good number of home runs. The power was there. And Brandon Nimmo never came into the league as a power hitter. He came in as a contact hitter, right? And even though, at some point I was having a little bit of an issue with that because I was like, he's striking out a little bit more, but that, he's uppercutting a lot on his swing. So he's trying to show more power, but it's affecting his strikeout percentage. And that was my only issue with that. But I'm like, listen, if Brandon Nimmo could just get on base as a DH and show you a little bit of his power, why not have him in DH? It takes a little bit of pressure off of him in terms of playing the field. There's still pressure being a DH because as a DH, you gotta either get on base or move your runner over or score that runner with your power, right? But I think he would have did well in that. You could have still used them for that contract. Now, of course, people say, well, at the end of the day, it wasn't about Brandon Nimmo being able to play. It was them trying to get that money off of the books. They wanted to move off that contract. I understand that. That I completely understand. But while you try to eliminate one problem, you create another problem for yourself because now you don't have a significant DH, right? Brandon Nimmo is batting in the 270 with a 7 something OPS, and it's in the 770s, right? And I'm going based off what I remember. I don't have the stats right now. Matter of fact, because I'm recording this, let's look at Brandon Nimmo's stats right now. Just so I can clarify it, because everybody makes it seem like Brandon Nimmo is playing horrible right now. I'm gonna show you guys. Okay, so this is Brandon Nimmo's just overall season stats right now. Let me show it to you guys. This is his stat right now. Second, okay. I'm gonna hide the graphic just for a second, just so I can show you guys his thing. All right. So Brandon Nimmo is batting 266, 13 home runs, 48 RBIs with a 757 OPS. Okay, it's not great, right? It is not great at all, but it's not bad either. Okay, the power numbers are not there, right? Because it's only 13 home runs, but 13 home runs for DH, I'll take it. I will take it because, like I said, Brandon Nimmo is also a contact hitter. You put Brandon Nimmo on runners on, and Brandon Nimmo's coming up. I'll take that any day of the week. I will take that any day of the week, right? The OPS is not bad. 757 OPS with 48 RBIs. I'll take that. I will take that because he's not affecting you defensively. But again, people come up here and say, well, not here specifically, but people on social media say, thank God we traded Brandon Nimmo because now we get to see Carson and AJ. The thing is, you still could have get Brandon Nimmo for Carson and AJ, and that's been my point. So with that trade, it's like, you didn't have to get rid of Brandon Nimmo. Everybody says, well, what about the second base situation? Well, you were gonna keep Brett Beatty, right? That and that's another issue, right? I don't like Brett Beatty. I do not like Brett Beatty one bit. I really don't. But here's the thing: we got to deal with the fact that Brett Beatty's here. We have to deal that Brett Beatty's gonna be on this team. Why? Because they keep giving him ample time to try to get it together. They keep giving Brandon Nimmo so much time. Not Brandon Nimmo, Brett Beatty, excuse me. They give Brett Beatty so much time, and they give him the red carpet. The red carpet that they give Carson Bench, which is reasonable, they give to Brett Beatty, and that's not reasonable. Because Brett Beatty, yes, he's versatile, but he's not consistent. He's not consistent. He's not that guy. Yet for some reason they keep thinking that Brett Beatty is gonna turn it around, and he's gonna be what the Yankees thought Clint Frazier was gonna be. They keep thinking that he's gonna be another Miguel Andujar, and that's just not the case. By the way, Miguel Andujar is way better than Brett Beatty. I would rather him than Brett Beatty, but that's not the case. My point is that even though we gotta deal with the fact that Brett Beatty is here, if you're going to use a second baseman, you're going to give him consistent time. Put Brett Beatty in fucking second base until you call somebody up from the minors, right? And I'm just saying that instead of having to force him to play a position that he's not used to, right? They keep running Brett Beatty out in the outfield, thinking that one day he's just going to turn it around. He sucks in the outfield. He sucks. His footing is whacked. He can't play it. He's not an outfielder. We have to stop with this notion of, yo, we can play guys out of position and it's gonna work. No, it's not gonna work. These guys play a natural position for a reason. Some guys are versatile and some guys are not. And with this kid, he's not that versatile, man. Can he play third base? Yes, he's a natural third baseman, but he can also play second base. He actually looked really solid in first base, but he's more of a versatile. He's more of a versatile infielder. He's not an outfielder. And until they get that through their head, they're gonna keep dealing with this problem. But like I said, they didn't have to trade from Marcus Semien. They could have at least had Brett Beatty in second base and told him, like, listen, kid, we're gonna give you this opportunity at second base, but you need to fucking be more consistent offensively. because he's going to be here anyways. And they keep giving this kid ample opportunity to try to get something done. The same thing like they did with Mark Vientos. The problem with Mark Vientos is that he just can't hit. He's just inconsistent as a hitter. And he hasn't been the same hitter since he was in 2024. And I hate going back to 2024, but that's just what it is. But yeah, I didn't like that. I mean, I gave the trade a chance. I said, listen, you got a veteran of Marcus Semien who's a better defender than Jeff McNeil. You know, if he can at least turn into what he was 2 years ago in 2024, because he had a decent season in 2024, I'll take that. He hasn't been it, so it's a bad trade because you again, you didn't have to move on from Nimmo. Nimmo could have been your DH because his power was getting there. He showed you power throughout last year and throughout 2024. Even in 2023, he showed you that he had power. So not only is he a good contact hitter, but his power was there where he could be a DH and help you. You didn't have to take a risk with him playing the field, and it would have eliminated that problem. Then we go on to the next signing, Devin Williams. Devin Williams. Now, this one for me was a bit of a head scratcher because of the fact that I don't know. It just, in the second half of the season last year, he did well for the Yankees, but he still finished with a 4-something ERA. Now, I wish they would have signed, if they were going to go to a different route with the closer, I wish they would have signed Robert from the Braves. Obviously, I was wrong on that. I mean, he finished with a 2.97 ERA. He was really good for the Padres. I thought that would have been a better option if they weren't going to bring Diaz back, but I was on the notion I wanted Diaz back. I was on the notion that they were going to bring him back. I thought they were going to bring him back. I thought that they were going to, give him whatever he wanted. He was, again, to me, he was still the best closer in the league. And I said, okay, they're signing Devin Williams, and this was before Edwin Diaz had signed with the Dodgers. I said they're signing Devin Williams. Okay, I can see Devin Williams being the 8th inning setup man for Edwin Diaz. I could see Devin Williams being that. It's less pressure for Devin. Devin has also gotten his experience with the New York Yankees, so he's staying in a market that he's already experienced. Cool, I like that. But then the situation of Edwin Diaz not coming back, and again, I think the Diaz thing was more of a personal thing for him. The brother came out on his introductory press conference and basically said, "I want to win." Now, could have the Mets been able to offer the same thing that the Dodgers did? Yes, they could have. I'm not giving them a bypass with that. They 100% could have. However, him saying that he wanted to win and him feeling a way that they signed Devin Williams and him seeing that, because remember, it was reported that he felt the way. He felt the way about them signing Devin Williams because he thought that was to take his job. And this wasn't necessarily the case. Now it's the case because they didn't bring him back. But again, I feel like Edwin Diaz, didn't want to be here. And to me, it kind of just seemed like he was already done. Like once he saw the news about Devin Williams signing here, he was like, nah, I'm cool. And to me, it just feels like Edwin Diaz just wanted to go to the Dodgers to win. He saw that he had an opportunity to go there, and he was like, I just want to win my ring, and that's it. So, good riddance to you, sir. And so far, it's looking like we dodged a bullet on that one. And we also dodged a bullet on Kyle Tucker. But I'll get there when we get to the Bo Bichette situation. Jorge Polanco. And boy, will I tell you that the Jorge Polanco signing has looked so bad. So bad. You didn't sign Pete Alonso. And you thought signing your home run, your best home run hitter, your homegrown player, your best first baseman since Carlos Delgado, your star franchise player besides Francisco Lindor, you thought that not giving him a deal was smart. And then you thought, hey, his replacement is going to be Jorge Polanco. Mind you, Jorge Polanco has never played the position in his career. It goes back to my statement of David Stearns thinking that he can play guys out of position and that it would work. Ladies and gentlemen, that has never worked consistently like that. Not only has that shit fell flat in our face, excuse my language, The brother can't even play the position he signed here for. Now he's playing half of that, right? Because he's a DH, right? They signed him to be a DH slash first baseman, but it was mostly to play first base, and he can't even play that. So now the Mets are stuck with a situation where Jared Young, who's having a really decent season this year, Jared Young is your first baseman now. He's your everyday first baseman. Where most likely they're not even going to bring Jared Young back because they probably want to get better in that position. Jared Young is decent. He's not great. You need a better option in there. Right? You need a better option in that position. Instead, you could have saved yourself that embarrassment and brought Pete Alonso back for what he was asking for. Now, of course, there are people that are saying good riddance to Pete. We offered him an extension. He didn't want to take an extension. We offered him a 3-year deal in the offseason of 2024. He didn't want to take that deal. He automatically took another 3-year deal with an opt-out after the first year, and then he opted out after the first year like we expected because of how he was playing in the playoffs, especially after he hit that game-winning home run in Game 3 of the wild card over against Devin Williams. And he signed with Boris in the offseason of 2024, which I wasn't mad at, right? I was actually happy that he signed, not happy, excuse me, but I was actually like, okay, I understand why he signed with Boris. He was getting a lot of hate for that, but I understand why he signed with Boris because naturally he wants to get paid. At the end of the day, yes, he loves this game and he loves this team, but this is a business, man. I hate being that type of guy, but it's a business. Like, you got to be able to provide and take care of your family for the job that you love working for. You're living a dream. You're playing professional baseball, but you also want to get paid. And he's watching a lot of guys that are under the Boris Corporation get paid unreasonable but also reasonable contracts. So he's like, hey, listen, if Boris is that good of a negotiator as an agent, I wonder what the hell he could get me if I opt out and go to him. And he got paid. He got paid 5 years, $155 million from the fucking Baltimore Orioles, who are cheap. But again, Pete Alonso right now has a 250 something average with 30 to 31 home runs right now, and he's one of the main reasons as to why the Baltimore Orioles are only 2 games back from a third wild card in the American League. There's so many people that defend the fact that Pete Alonso was declining. He was declining in average. He was declining in his home run numbers. He was declining in his OPS. Yes, I get it. Pete Alonso's probably not going to have 40 home runs. I get that. But to say at least for 5 years, let's say if we would have given him exactly what the Orioles gave him, to say that out of the 5 years that he was given that he was going to decline, I disagree with that. He was still going to give you 25 to 30 home runs. The OPS still would have been in the 800s, in my opinion. Maybe if he was declining OPS, it would have been in the 770s, in the 780s, maybe the 790s. But that's still good. The average might still be maybe 250, 260. But again, if the home run numbers are there and his defense is not as questionable, everybody keeps saying he messed up one of our pitchers. Is that the same excuse that we're going to keep using every time? Because now look what the organization's at. Now you don't have a legit first baseman. Now and again, you can't go by the prospects because they just took Ryan Clifford back to the development. The brother can't even hit a baseball right now. So the number one guy that was in AAA, that was a natural first baseman, that's supposed to be another power hitter, can't even hit a fucking baseball right now. That they had to take him back to the development. So not only are you screwed up in there, but you don't have a natural first baseman that's at least giving you a similar production of what Pete Alonso's giving you. And that's the problem. Are they gonna go out there in free agency and go sign a Jake Bowers? Are they going to go out there and get Jonathan Aranda from the Tampa Bay Rays, who the Rays are probably going to pay because he's younger? And Yandy Diaz is only getting up there in age. Yandy Diaz is 36. Now, if the Mets want to go ahead, if the Rays don't sign Yandy Diaz, and the Rays and he ends up falling to free agency and he becomes an unrestricted free agent, and the Mets want to give Yandy Diaz a 3-year deal, I'll take it. I'm fine, but again, in David Stearns' mind, he's trying to stay young. He's trying to stay as young as possible. This is his mindset. He wants to build young. He wants to build within a farm. He wants to build and not try to get old. He doesn't want long-term contracts. This is his mindset. So are you going to give a 3-year deal to a 36-year-old Yandy Diaz? Not saying that it's a bad thing, because Yandy's still performing at an exceptional rate at the age that he's at. But what are your replacements now that Jorge Polanco can't play the field like that, and he can't even play first base? Because Jared Young is not going to cut it unless Jared Young takes another step than what he's showing right now. And he surprises all of us. That's the situation that we're dealing with as an organization. If Ryan Clifford was actually performing to what we know he could perform, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because we're like, all right, Ryan Clifford's coming up. The defense at first base is there. It's solid. It's not great, but it's there. And he could hit, and he's a lefty that can hit for power. But because he can't even hit right now, and he's taking a step back, now you're asking yourself, damn, we might have to have a conversation about moving certain players in that position, because we can't get a natural first baseman. We can't. And that's an issue. So now we have to stick with another year of Jorge Polanco, who can't even play the position. He could be a DH, but is he hitting the same? Can he stay healthy and hit as a DH, and at least play up to what his contract, what we gave him for that 2-year, $40 million? That's always going to be a question, and it's going to be an L on David Stearns, because we're suffering because of that, right? But enough on that. You traded Jeff McNeil to the Athletics. Traded Jeff McNeil for a young 19-year-old prospect. We don't know how that prospect is going to turn out, but he's 19, and based on how David Stearns is developing these guys in the farm system, he may or may not turn out what we hope he could, if that makes any sense. I might have said that a different way, but Jeff McNeil, again, I think we were all tired of Jeff McNeil, and it got to a point where it was like, listen, can we just move him? And at the end of the day, that's what they did. We thank Jeff. I thank Jeff for a lot of the moments that he had here, but it was clear as day he wasn't the same player that he was in 2022 when he won that batting title. And it's just, at some point, it's like, listen, and enough's enough. Try to give me a young guy in there. You were hoping that maybe a Ronnie would have turned out well, or maybe a Luis Angel Acuna would have turned out well to put him in that position, but these guys weren't hitting. And the amount of times that Carlos Mendoza was giving him opportunity, they just weren't hitting. And then, when he stopped giving them opportunity because of that, everybody was like, well, they're not playing consistently enough. And I was like, well, when they weren't hitting. Other guys need time. Other guys need, opportunity. So, that it is what it is with that. We signed Bo Bichette. So the Bo Bichette situation was unfortunate. And it was unfortunate for me because, in a way, and I forgot to put this, but yeah, I forgot to put this real quick. So excuse me. Well, welcome back to Top Bunk Sports Podcast. I don't know why I didn't put this before. I had these ready for you guys, but I'm gonna put this up here. But the Bo Bichette situation was a bit. I just didn't know. I didn't know, because here's the thing. We were talking about it in in a space when we were talking about the offseason signings and like possibly what could we get for him. But the thing about that is that, like, I was never a fan of Bo. I was never a fan of him defensively. I didn't like his swing. He uppercuts a lot. He's a very late hitter, so he likes to go the other way. He's a gap to gap hitter, but I just I didn't think he'd fit in New York. But when it came to the situation of them not getting Kyle Tucker, right? They were going to give him a 3-year, $60 million deal. And that's another bullet that we dodged, right? Along with the Edwin Diaz, situation. But that was a bullet that they dodged. They dodged the whole thing with Kyle Tucker. You're seeing that right now. He looks like he looks like a shell of himself right now. He looks like the pressure of playing in a big market and the pressure of him, living up to that contract is getting to him. So we dodged the bullet on that. Our replacement for not getting Kyle Tucker was Bo Bichette. Again, we signed him to a 3-year, $126 million deal with 2 opt-outs. The thing with Bo is, like I said, I from the beginning in the offseason, the very beginning of the offseason, when shout out to Metcalf, when they put a potential Bo Bichette pickup for it was like 8 year, it was like an 8-year deal. They set a projection that he could possibly get signed, picked up for an 8-year deal, and they said they would do it. I wouldn't do it. I wasn't a fan of it. Again, the whole notion was him to play second base, right? But his defensive numbers were suspect. He had, he's a suspect. He's a suspect defender, which he's proven a lot of people wrong this year for playing out of position in third base. But I wasn't a fan of it, and then we signed him. So I said, I'm gonna give it a chance. Number one, because he has an opt out after the first and second year. Okay, so if it doesn't work out, he can opt out. Obviously that's not the case now, like I spoke about it earlier, but there is a situation where he could prove a lot of people wrong for getting paid that much. It was an overpay, but obviously with Will Salmon reporting, and I think Anthony DeComo reported as well, that during the GM meetings he was there and they were having conversations with him about them having interest in signing him. So I respected Bo for not only taking that in a big market like New York, but remember he wanted exactly 7 years and 200 million, and the Phillies gave him that, and he declined that. So right then and there, like I gave him mad props, and I was like, yo, respect to you, bro, respect to you, because y'all know I can't stand the Phillies. I can't stand the Phillies, especially as a Met fan and as a New Yorker. So when he did that, I was like, respect. But he's obviously getting better in the second half. He has about a 300 average in the second half of the season. But he started off really bad. Really bad. I mean, he was getting booed almost every game in Citi Field. And this, again, we hold David Stearns and Steve Cohen accountable. You're playing Bo Bichette out of position. Now the thing is while his offense was suspect this year, he's played third base very, very well. He has. I can't even hate on the fact on his defense at third base, because he's played it very, very well. So the question is, how will he turn out in his second year next year in 2027 if there's baseball, right? Because that's a whole different conversation. But if there's baseball and we get to see baseball next year and he's opting in, how will that play out? How will he turn out in his second year now that he has experienced the fan base, the city, the media in New York, and how he was able to deal with the struggles here? How will that turn out? And again, I'm not shocked that he opted in. I expected him to opt in because of how bad he was playing. And I just don't think that a team is going to pay him more or pay him exactly what we paid him, considering the fact that, again, he does have some questions in his swing. Is he going to play a better defensive? Is he going to have a better defensive year than he's having now? And is he even worth all that money? Because a lot of people looked at us like the Mets were desperate. They had to sign a big offseason. They had to make a big offseason transaction after falling out of the Kyle Tucker suite. So that's just what it is with Bo Bichette. Before I finish the video, though, about the overview, I do want to get to a video by my guy Wardy, where he spoke about something in return to Bo Bichette for next year. But I'll get to that at the end. We traded for Luis Robert. And the Luis Robert thing, I wasn't a fan of from the beginning. Even before they officially made the trade, I had said to a lot of people on X, I'm not a fan of Luis Robert Jr. He's only had 1 year of success. A lot of people were coming in saying that change of scenery was going to be a difference maker, and it hasn't. It hasn't been that. We haven't really dealt with the injury factor of it. Obviously, in the beginning we did, but he hasn't really been injured that much. He's been inconsistent. Yeah, he covers a lot of center field, but again, when do we start having a conversation of just him not being that guy? And the thing is, the White Sox paid him $20 million. No other team was dumb enough to take that $20 million deal off the White Sox hands besides us. And we're paying the price for it. Now, granted, it has came out that the Mets are gonna, not take his option. So he will be he won't be on the Mets next year, thank God. But I just was never a fan of Luis Robert Jr. And of course, Luis Angel Acuna wasn't doing much either. But I would much rather have Luis Angel Acuna while he's still young. You can still use him at center field and at least get some defense out of him, like the White Sox are, right? The White Sox are continuing to play him in the lineup. He's been a little bit decent for them. Obviously, the OPS is not there, the average is not there. But again, you put him in the bottom of the lineup, he's covering center field for you. How hard can it be? With the additions of Tyrone Taylor at the time before they traded him, I would have dealt with that because at least you would have had some defense there. And with Luis Robert Jr., you have that, but it's more about his offense because you want to see that power. You want to see that home run hitter that Luis Robert Jr. was with the White Sox in 2023. And I didn't think that was going to work. And so far, I've been right. So I didn't like that trade at all. I'm just glad they're not picking up his option and he won't be here next year. And I know a lot of people are like, well, if you just use him as a backup with $20 million, you can't use Luis Robert Jr. as a backup. He has to play every day. And again, that's the unfortunate part that we are dealing with now with Luis Robert Jr. But yeah, I didn't like that trade at all. We signed Luke Weaver, and I was happy about that. Luke Weaver is a very good reliever. Luke Weaver understands the pressure in New York. Luke Weaver came here and again, one of the best, if not the best reliever in baseball before he got traded. Luke Weaver fucking performed to his potential, performed up to the contract. And mind you, we still had another year with him, which I know people were kind of like, listen, if you had another year with Luke Weaver, why trade him? I I get both sides. I get why they traded him, but I also get why people are like, yo, why'd you trade him if he had another year on his deal? I would have not traded him personally. I would have liked to keep him. But the Mets based off what they've been saying are all about prospects. They're all about adding to their farm. They're all about building the strength of the farm. So you knew with how he was performing this year, you were at least gonna get a top prospect. Not in baseball, but at least a system, a top system prospect, which they did, right? They got the ninth prospect in their farm. He wasn't top 100, right? But he was number 9 in their farm, and he's a decent hitter to say the least. So you wish you would have gotten more. I would prefer not to trade him, but Luke Weaver was a pickup that a lot of people were happy about, and it's unfortunate we had to trade him. But hopefully that trade can work out, which I'll get to when we get to the trade deadline moves, and then obviously the big fish, where we traded 2 top prospects for in the guy that I wanted and I'll take some heat for in Freddie Peralta. Now Freddie Peralta, I appreciate the guy. Let me just say that. I mean, he's been nothing but a positive guy. He's held himself accountable every time he's answered questions. He hasn't backed down from the media. He really struggled here. And I don't know if it was because he was coming from a small market in Milwaukee to come into a big market in New York, but it just didn't work out for us. And it's unfortunate because, again, you would have loved to see him work out, especially as a number one option in our rotation. It's unfortunate that he didn't. It was just bad, man. It was just bad. And again, it got to a point where you were kind of looking at Freddie like, man, just I hope he gets moved. I hope he gets moved. And for a second, I didn't think I had this thing in my mind where I was like, I don't know if he's gonna get traded. I feel like they're gonna keep him. I feel like they're gonna keep him because they feel like they can run it back with him, and they could give him a deal. Maybe not exactly what he was looking for. I don't know if that's 100% what he was looking for. I know Bob Nightingale reported it was like an 8-year, $218 million deal, I think it was. But I don't know if that was 100% true. That could be. I don't know. But maybe they give him something less and they try to tell him, like, listen, we want you back. Just understand we can't give you what you're asking for because you didn't perform to our standards. And he seems like an understanding guy based on how well he was talking to the media, how much of a person that he was in terms of holding himself accountable. So I think they could have came to an understanding of that. But it's just a matter of, would he be okay with that? Unfortunately, that's not going to be the case. Who knows? Maybe they do bring him back, even though he got traded there. But he's not having a good year with the Rays either. He's just 2026 has just been a frustrating year for Freddie Peralta. But I wished it would have worked out, especially because we had to give up 2 major prospects. And I knew you were gonna have to give us something big for him, but you just wish that it would have worked out. But those were our 2026 off-season moves. If you guys see this video in YouTube, which it will be posted on YouTube, comment and let me know what you guys thought of it. Let me know what you guys, you guys can hit me in the DMs on X at Topping Sports and let me know what you thought about the offseason moves. I know if you guys see me on Queens Baseball, we've spoken a lot about it. We've given a lot of opinions about it and how we felt about those moves. I mean, we still do to this day. I know we're getting a lot of stuff for talking about Pete Alonso because a lot of Met fans are like, well, we're done with the Pete situation. He's not here no more. But it's good to talk about these things because us as a fan base, we have to go through that. We have to go through that. Just like we go through the highs when they're doing well, we go through the lows. Losing Pete Alonso is a big part because of what we got in replace of him. What the decision that we made to replace his production. It's not fair. And we're suffering because of that. Meanwhile, he might make the playoffs and he's having another incredible season when everybody was like, he's gonna decline. He's not gonna have a good year this year. He's living up to that contract in his first year. At least he'll probably live up to that contract at least 3 of the 5 years that he signed for. So, is what it is. Let's get on to the trade deadline moves. The first trade, obviously, there is listed is traded AJ Minter to the Twins for the number 30 prospect in the Twins system, Bruin Arbagnani, who is his father. I can't believe I forgot his fucking name. I think it's Brian. Please, Met fans, please don't kill me. Arbagnani's father, the legend. You know what? I'm gonna search that up. I'm gonna search that up because I need to know as a Met fan his fucking name. He's one of the greatest. It has to be Brian. It has to be Brian. Let me see. I can't even spell his thing right. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Okay. The whole point is that we got Arbagnani's son and we got Billy Amick. Shout out to my guys at Queens Baseball. Hashtag swing decisions who kill me all the time because when he was traded to the Mets, I went into a Mets space after the trade deadline was over and his stats along with Arbagnani's son, they were posted on the Jumbotron. For those of you that go into spaces, you know what a Jumbotron is. They were posted, and I looked at the stats, and I said, For example, Billy Amick. Billy Amick, when he was traded here, he had a 225 average with an 820 OPS, and he had, I believe it was 20 home runs at the time. 20 home runs. He's hit 8 with us since he got traded here, but he had 20 home runs with an 820, I believe it, OPS. That to me, even though his average was low, he's a power hitter. He's a power hitter. And I looked at that and I said, yo, hold up. For him being ranked that low in Minnesota system, the home run number and the OPS number we shouldn't overlook that. That's pretty tough. That's pretty tough. And then, Arbagnani, Bruin Arbagnani had a 753, I think, OPS, but he had a decent, I think he had I think it was 280 or something. I don't remember, but the average and the OPS were decent enough. I said, bro, if they can perform better in our system than what they've performed in Minnesota's, you're talking about low prospect. I'm talking about number 9, number 29, and number 30. I'll take it. You know what I'm saying? I didn't come in there knowing anything about them. I just looked at their stats and I said, dude, I'll take that. And so far, at least Billy Amick, he's performing really well. Really well. You might have found your Pete Alonso, you're at least in the early stages in Billy Amick, man. The average is not there. He does strike out a lot, but the power numbers are there. And the OPS is there, man. I mean, this guy hits nukes. He's been hitting nukes since he's came here. So I think that trade is a win, in my opinion, because for AJ Minter, you aren't going to get a top prospect in their system. They got 2 bottom prospects, top 30 prospects, right? You literally 29 and number 30. And I think Billy Amick was 29. He's performing way better than I think everybody expected. So shout out to him. We talked about Freddie getting traded to the Rays. They got Number 12 system prospect, Aiden Smith. Number 15 system prospect, Emilion Petre, who again is performing really well and could make his name could go up. I think to he could be in the conversation for second base next year. If it's gonna be between him and Mitch Voigt. I think Mitch Voigt kind of has a little bit of an edge over Emilion Petre right now, but that's not a name to sniff at. I know Wardy kind of talked about that in the video that I'm actually gonna play for you in when we talk about what I want to talk about with Bo Bichette. But he spoke about that. He spoke about a lot of that being the possibility next year if if certain guys in our system take take their leaps. And then obviously they got number 17 pros, uh, prospect from their system, right-handed pitcher Gary Gill. So, three decent prospects in their prospect system, not on all of baseball. And Emilion Petre seems like he can be the winner between all three of them. Now, Aiden Smith is kind of there, but Emilion Petre, he's a really good hitter. He's a really good defender at second base from what I've seen so far. And he might get that. It's going to be him and Mitch Voigt basically fighting for that. That's going to be pretty interesting to see what the Mets do there, especially if Marcus Semien, if Marcus Semien doesn't play as much and they try to go young at second base. And then we move to the big fish here. Obviously, we still got a couple trades below that. I spoke about the Luke Weaver trade, but the trade under that is Clay Holmes for Cubs number 2 ranked prospect Jefferson Rojas, and he's ranked 63 overall in all of baseball. But Jefferson Rojas, who is a shortstop slash third baseman, I think he's a natural third baseman, but he plays a little bit of shortstop. This kid is really good. And I just want to show you guys a little bit of his stats real quick, just to show you. But this is a guy that I was actually watching all to begin the year, because I wanted to be more in depth of our prospect system. But he was one of the guys that I was informed by my guy Randy, who you guys know that I did the Mets on Top podcast with before he had to stop. But he was informing me about him, and one for one thing, he's Dominican, right? But he's a really good hitter, and I want to show you guys his stats real quick, just so you guys could kind of see how well he is. Let me put this to the side real quick, just so you guys can see it. 1 second. All right, here we go. Okay, here we go. So you see it right here. Again, he's a AA right now, but the conversation of him possibly going to AAA next year could be a possibility. But if you look at his stats right now, he has a 271 average with an OPS at 810. It was higher when we traded for him, but he's Dominican. You look at his home run numbers, 18 home runs with 74 RBI. He has 18 stolen bases. He's really good. He has a career OPS of 739, but he's been doing very well in AA. And right now in our system, in the Mets system, he's our number 1 prospect, because obviously we traded Jet Williams to the Brewers for Freddie Peralta. But he's really good. This kid is super young, only 22. He's, again, plays shortstop, but he can also play third base. I was told he was a natural third baseman. I thought it was the other way around. So don't hold that against me. But, and Wardy spoke about this in the video that I'm going to show you guys, that there's a possibility if he does come up, what happens with Bo Bichette. But this kid is really, really good. I was happy when we got him. Obviously, we traded Clay and Tyrone Taylor for him, and I'm glad that they were at least able to get something decent for him with that factor, and being able to at least understand that, we might, instead of getting a third baseman, he might be in that position, and he might shock a lot of people. So who knows, man? Who knows what happens with that? But we got him. When it comes to the Luke Weaver trade, like I said, we got a shortstop out of the Luke Weaver trade. We got Sammy Stafora. Sammy Stafora was ranked 9th in the Pirates system, and Sammy Stafora, I know they talked about how he strikes out a lot. But you talk about the power numbers, it's there, but he does strike out a lot. I kind of get it. The thing with Stafora though is, like, If you can turn him into more of a contact hitter and less of a power hitter, I think that could work. Right? More discipline at the plate. He could work on that as the off season goes after the season is done. But there's stuff he can review once he gets here. I mean, when he got here, he was hitting doubles in the gap like nothing, right? And I was happy to see that, just because that was my point. If you could try to get him to hit more line drives instead of trying to uppercut, it would be better for his swing, because now not only would it help with his discipline, but a lot of the times when guys try to uppercut, you swing and miss a lot of the times, right? That's why a lot of power hitters, if they're not hitting home runs, they're striking out a lot, right? So with him, you could turn him into more of a contact hitter where he's hitting line drives, and then the power is gonna come. That just happens to natural hitters like that, and I think you could win with that if he can stay more like that instead of just showing off the power, where it hurts him because he's gonna be striking out a lot. So we'll see about that. I thought that was an interesting trade. I know people wanted more. I know people kind of thought that, hey, we could possibly get more for Luke Weaver, and that wasn't the case. And then, like I said before, I think when it came down to Luke Weaver, a lot of people wanted him to stay. You still had one more year on his deal, so people were like, "Yo, like we should keep him." And like I said, I see both sides, but I'm glad that they were able to get at least a top 10 prospect in their system, and he can turn into something. Again, he's a shortstop as well. He's young, so if it ever comes to a situation where Francisco Lindor can't play the field and Jefferson Rojas is in third base, if they give Jefferson Rojas that option, if Bo Bichette doesn't play into that factor after 2027, then and Sammy Stoffora can take that big leap. Who knows? Anything can happen within a year. You're talking about Francisco Lindor playing second base, Stoffora playing shortstop, and Rojas playing third base, or vice versa. I know it's not. I don't like the playing guys out of position, but maybe Sammy Stoffora finds himself here as a third baseman and becomes a natural third baseman. Who knows? Infielders know how to adjust at times. Are you able to make those adjustments? That's the question. So we'll see. But you got to the Brooks Raley trade. The Brooks Raley trade, you trade him to the Phillies for the 28th ranked prospect in the Philly system in John Spikeman, and they got a right-handed pitcher in their bullpen, and I can't even say his last name, so I'm not even gonna say it. But his name is Luke G. Again, I didn't really think much of this. I just it was weird to me that they would trade Brooks Raley to the Phillies, but maybe that was the best option that they kind of got for him, and that's the only thing I could go off, because Brooks Raley has had a really good year, especially in the first half before getting traded. So I might have thought that the suitors for him would have been a little bit more. But again, I guess I was wrong. I don't know. I don't know how that would. I didn't read into it. But again, they were able to trade Brooks Raley to the Phillies for the number 28 prospect in the Philly system. And then obviously to end it off, they traded Huascar Barrazaban to the Chicago White Sox for their number 20 prospects, their number 20 prospect in their system, Gabe Davis, and right-handed pitcher Zach Franklin. Barrazaban, we kind of knew he was going to get traded. Obviously, he's had a decent career as a Met. He's been a really good reliever for the Mets, and it's tough. I didn't want to let go of Barrazaban. Barrazaban has a nice sinker to himself. He has a really good fastball. He likes to attack the zone. He's not afraid to throw strikes down the middle and get a lot of swings and misses. He got a lot of swing and misses with his sinker. Like I said, he had a good sinker. So it to me, I didn't want to give that up. But you out of the guys, you never know if John Steakman or Gabe Davis could hit. You're talking about a number 20 ranked prospect in the White Sox system, where they're all about bringing up prospects and they got a good farm. He could probably hit. So you just never know. But with that being said, guys, that's the trade deadline moves that we made for 2026. Again, a decent trade deadline for what you gave up. A lot of the guys that they gave up, we didn't want to give up. I didn't want to give up Clay Holmes. I didn't want to give up Tyrone Taylor. I didn't want to give up Brooks Raley. I didn't want to give up Luke Weaver, especially with, him having a year left on that deal. Or Oscar Bond, I didn't want to give up either. But you were able to get some decent prospects back that could hit. In baseball, when it comes to prospects, all you need is one of these prospects to hit. especially with this Freddie deal. That Freddie deal seems like Emilion Pitre might hit the way he's playing. Okay, and so who knows? Who knows how that's gonna go? That's gonna be a very interesting thing. But that's the overview for 2026, man. Not a great year, not a fun season, man. They've been playing much better. They are, if I believe, they're 12 and 5, 12 and 5 since the trade deadline. They've been playing much better. Carson Bench has passed every expectation that has been set on him since he was given the red carpet before spring training. He's gonna be a goddamn stud. I can't wait to see what he does next year. Now that he has a full year of experience in the majors. AJ Ewing has been playing really solid. He's been striking out a lot, right? The OPS is not pretty, but he covers so much center field. He's very quick in the outfield. He's a really good lefty. The contact is there. He gets on base. The speed is there, especially with Carson as well. You got two guys that can steal bags for you. They got speed on the bases. Like, it's just, they've been nothing but exceptional. They've been nothing but fun to watch, and that's been the fun thing of this year. It's just the development of Carson Bench and AJ Ewing. That's what makes us watch, is the fact that guys like that. You got Christian Scott, who looks like he could be an option for the rotation next year as a number 4th guy in our rotation. Zach Thornton, I know certain people have their questions on Zach Thornton, but a number 5 guy, as young as Zach Thornton is, a guy that has a good changeup and a really good fastball as a lefty. He can make those adjustments after being up here. It's all about that experience and being able to not only learn from your experience up here, but make those adjustments as you make your way to the minors. Those guys been fun to watch, right? And then you look at some of the other, decisions that they've made. They've been the bullpen looking really well, giving Nate Lavender after he took about a year off from after being very questionable. You look at Chris Duarte, a chubby guy, right? But has a lot of good movement on his pitches, man. He's been very, very good, man. The Mets being able to move Kodai Senga to the closer role. He has 4 saves as a closer. He's been looking really good, man. Kodai Senga has 1 more year left on his deal. Kodai Senga have finally found something where he can probably be successful, and they might go into next year telling Devin Williams, yo, you might have to be a setup man, because Kodai Senga has probably seemed to find it. And who knows, maybe if he goes into next year as a closer and he continues to build on his success, he might be a trade piece come that trade deadline, or in the middle of the first half of the season. So we'll see, man. But the bullpen has been really well. The rotation has been solid. Obviously, there's more conversations to go through within the bullpen, and what's the rotation going to be like next year, who's going to be on this team next year, what they're going to do with the outfield. Is the outfield set, which I think it is. The infield, what's going to happen with the infield? Are they going to get a DH? There's so much things to talk about. We got to talk about the downfall of Francisco Alvarez. There's so much to talk about. But before I end this video, I want to get to a video like I talked about, Wardy, kind of talking about a situation that could happen next year. And it's very interesting, and I'll give my opinion on it. I was kind of doing a test run yesterday, and I kind of give my opinion on it as I was just testing it out to hear the audio about that, because I was watching the video yesterday, and I saw this was his recent video, and he kind of spoke about Bo Bichette coming back, because obviously he's going to opt in, and talked about a situation that could happen next year that, I'm not too fond of, right? And like I said, I'll give my opinion on it, but it was interesting that he spoke on it. And yeah, I'm going to show you guys the video. So here it is. Make sure you guys follow and subscribe to Wardy. Wardy's my guy. I've been able to have a conversation with Wardy. He's a dope dude. He puts a lot of time and effort in his content. One of the best Met content creators on this app. There's a lot of other content creators that I will shout out at the end of this video, but Wardy's one of them. So make sure you guys subscribe and follow Wardy on all major platforms, as you see it right there on the screen. So I'm going to play this portion right here and give my opinion on it. But as he talks, guys, let me know in the comments what you guys think about this opinion and anything else that I spoke about today. But here we go. Speaking on that, I have a video for that, because a lot of the shit that's going on with the Dodgers and that, very interesting, and the media is not really talking about it as much. Some are here. There are content creators here and there that are talking about it because it's very important, but there's a lot of information about that I will get to, because I think it's pretty interesting, not only from the Mets perspective, but for the entire perspective of the MLB, it's very interesting. But yeah,
Should he be back?
no, we
I
don't.
don't fault them. If Jared
Yeah,
Young
no, we
misses
don't. I'm
any
done.
game,
Yeah.
pretty bleak right now and across
Yeah,
very.
absolutely. Yep. So I'm gonna stop it there. But yeah, again, let me know what you guys think in the comments when you guys see this video. What you guys think about that possibly happening? I personally, and I'm gonna tell you my opinion. I don't necessarily think that is a smart move, and I'm gonna tell you why. It goes back to and again, shout out to Wardy. I see Wardy's vision. Me and Wardy have spoken about Bo Bichette coming back. He's on board with it. Obviously, he mentioned here he doesn't hate Bo Bichette. He shouldn't be making the type of money that he is based on the performance that he put this year. But that can fluctuate. If next year he opts in, which most likely he will, and he ends up performing better than what he's showing this year. But I don't like it because it goes back to what I said in the very beginning about playing guys out of position. At some point, we have to stop with the notion that if we put a guy in a certain position and we give him time to develop, that it's gonna work. That's not the case. And I know Bo Bichette, like I said, when we spoke about the signing of Bo Bichette and how it's worked out defensively, it's thank God that it has. Because while we dodged the bullet of Kyle Tucker not being here, and obviously, Mark Vientos, excuse me, not working out because he's inconsistent and he got hurt. And obviously, Brett Beatty being defensively being very versatile, but not being able to fucking hit on a consistent basis, excuse my language. It was kind of a blessing in disguise that you took that chance with Bo Bichette at third base and it's worked out, because it has. Right? I'm not giving no excuses because I didn't want him here, but I gotta give credit where credit is due. He's worked out defensively at third base. However, just because it's worked out in third base does not necessarily mean that it's going to work out in first base. And for us to go from having a natural first baseman at first base, regardless if you want to talk about his defense and talk about how he, sometimes he can't throw from first base. At the end of the day, Pete Alonso was still a natural first baseman. And I think, like I said, not only weren't you able to replace your homegrown natural first baseman with another natural first baseman in free agency, and because you decided not to bring your guy and Pete back, you replaced it with a guy that's never played that position and can't play that position anymore. So now you're putting another unnatural first baseman in that position because he's coming back here. And yes, even though you're probably getting better at third base with a younger Jefferson Rojas possibly coming up here, that doesn't necessarily mean that I need to put him at first and then have him learn a whole different position, even though it's from corner to corner. There's still more pressure in first base for him now, because he has to make every scoop, he has to make every catch, he has to make every stride, right? When he's dealing with a fast runner and the ball's about to die out. Because again, sometimes Francisco Lindor, his arm strength is not there no more. Well, it's still there, but not as much. You kind of see the decline defensively a little bit with his arm strength. So sometimes you gotta make those scoops, right? It's a little bit different, man. It's not as easy. Where a natural first baseman knows how to do that within an instant. That's all they know. That's all they've learned on their come up from high school to college, even in little league. When all they've known is that. It's a little bit different than putting a guy that's never had to deal with that. And Bo Bichette having to learn that in third base, yeah, you give him credit for having to learn the hot corner in third base, because that's not as easy either. That's very hard. Third base is one of the hardest positions besides shortstop when you talk about infield. But first base, everything is going to you. So that's gonna take him another situation where he's gonna have to learn a new position. Not saying that he can't, but again, I would much rather them deal with a natural first baseman. And if they're going to bring in a natural first baseman, go ahead and bring in a Jake Bauers. I know he's not pretty. I understand that. But I'd much rather deal with a natural first baseman than them going in and putting Bo Bichette there, because Bo Bichette can play. If he's played third, he could play first. I get it. I understand. Hey, if he could do one hot corner, he could do the other. I understand that. But For us to take that risk with Bo Bichette learning third base, if he's gonna be here, you give Jefferson Rojas that time a little bit more to develop in AAA if he makes that next jump. Not saying that he is gonna make that jump. There's the way he's playing in AA right now, he could be looking at playing starting off the 2027 season in AAA. You give him more time. The more time you give your prospects in development, the better they could possibly come out to be. Not everybody's gonna be like Ryan Clifford. And that's another situation that we're dealing with, where the conversation of Bo Bichette at first base would not be happening if Ryan Clifford would have what his development would have been better. That's another hit that we're taking. So I don't know. I'm just not a fan of it. Again, I could be wrong. I was wrong about Bo Bichette playing third base. He's proven everybody wrong defensively. So I could be wrong, but I'm just not a fan of it. I feel like we got to stick to playing players in their natural position. If that's the case, I'd rather just them go get a first baseman. And I know to Wardy's point, he said, listen, there's not that many options in the free agency pool. It's very thin this year. It's very thin after this year. And again, we don't even know what's going to happen because there's going to be a lockout after December 1st. Who knows if maybe a Jake Bowers gets signed. Who knows? Who knows? We don't know. Maybe a Yandy Diaz, they don't pick up his option and he becomes an unrestricted free agent. Then you're talking about bringing Yandy Diaz here. And again, there's so many options they could go based on what happens in free agency. I just don't think right now Bo Bichette being in there after having to learn to play a new position he's never played, having to do that with first base. I think in first base, because it's so important, we need a natural first baseman there. And that's just my opinion. Could it work out? Yes. But we will see, man. Bo Bichette, like Wardy said, is coming back. He's most likely opting in. The numbers defensively have not been that good in his career, but he's proven to play third base really well this year, and he's playing much better in the second half than he did to begin the year this year. You're just hoping that he picks up starting the year in 2027 and he has a much better year where, who knows, maybe because he plays a better year in 2027, he opts out in his second year. Who knows? Maybe that happens. Then maybe you're talking about bringing Jefferson Rojas up here if Bo opts out. And in 2028, we see Jefferson. Who knows? There's going to be a lot of different moves happening within this roster construction, especially with David Stearns trying to make this team as young as possible while building around Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor. Maybe Marcus Semien is not here and you see a Mitch Voigt. Or hell, maybe Billy Amick takes a leap. Billy Amick, they don't trade him, and he becomes our first baseman. Maybe they give him that red carpet that they give Carson based on the power that he's providing right now. Who knows? Who knows? There's a lot of things that could happen in 2027. Who knows what happens? But to Wardy's point, based on the trade deadline moves that we made, there's a lot of young pieces that they added to their farm because, again, before the trade deadline, we took a dip down within our farm system. And now with adding the guys that we got in the trade deadline, it's more deeper than it was when we began the year. So either some of these guys are going to be here or we're going to use them as trade pieces. And that's why Wardy was saying that they might have a better chance of making trades in the offseason than signing guys based on what they got at the trade deadline. So who knows? We'll see. I think that was a very interesting take by Wardy there. I wanted to share it with you guys to see what you guys thought. And listen, man, hasn't been a fun year. Like I said, we still have about a month and we got about I think like 36 more games, I believe, like 35 around there. So we got about a month and some change before the season is over. I know a lot of people are looking at the wild card standings and saying, hey, only 11 games back, we could possibly do the miracle. The problem with that is you need to play consistent. You need to at least lose about 8 games only and win about 35. So you need to go like 35-8. But even if you do go 35-8, the other teams in front of you need to start losing. You can't. You have a slim room for errors and a slim room for losing games. And the way that this team plays, even though they've been playing well as of late, they haven't been that consistent throughout the year to show us that, yeah, we can just turn it up a notch. And to be honest with you, yeah, you hope, right? I think us as Met fans, I'm a positive guy. You guys know how I am. I'm always positive when it comes to this team. But hope is not a strategy. Hope is not a strategy. And, why watch this team surprise you all year then all of a sudden to make the playoffs and then possibly lose, possibly get embarrassed in pressure situations in the playoffs? Why would I want to go through that? I'd rather wash my hands with this season. What's done is done, and then focus on how we could build this roster to make it better. So then that way we know, oh, this team has a better chance of making the playoffs than what we figured out for 2026. Because all the moves that they made in 2026, we were questioning. We were questioning the Bo Bichette signing, especially knowing where he was going to play. We were questioning the Jorge Polanco signing. We were questioning the Marcus Semien trade. We were questioning the Devin Williams move. And I'm not saying we, like, the entire Met. I know it was in the middle, but there's a reason why a lot of us were hesitant on some of the moves that they made, because a lot of these guys have been questionable. And so far we've been right. But let's see, man. It's up to David Stearns to get out of his ways and be better. And who knows, maybe that he needs a GM, but that's a different conversation for another day, man. I appreciate you guys for watching this video. Like I said, make sure you guys give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Follow me at Top Bunk Sports on all social media platforms. Make sure you guys, if you guys want to listen to this episode and while you're at work, wherever you're at, you just want to listen, you guys could go see that on Apple Podcasts. You guys can go see that on Spotify or any podcast platforms. I appreciate the love and support. Like I said, I know a lot of the times I'm very inconsistent. I do a couple videos and I take a break. I really, really, really want to use this time as a jump start to just start posting consistently. And I got a couple good videos to start off with. But yeah, man, more Met content coming your way, more Knicks content coming your way, and then more, videos on overall baseball and overall basketball, and just, trying to give you guys a consistent version of myself, especially now that I got a lot more responsibilities within school. Paying rent. I know that's TMI, but that's, it's more, I'm using this as a way of motivation to just get back to doing what I love. So yeah, I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much. And I'll catch you guys on the next video, man. Peace out.